More now from ثيدور Qutoof. He served as U.S. ambassador to Syria from 2001 to 2003, part of a 31-year career in the Foreign Service, most of it in the Middle East. And Amar Abdulhamid is a liberal democracy activist whose anti-regime activities led to his exile from Syria in 2005. He now lives in the United States and writes the blog Syria Revolution Digest. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
The reports are, Amar, that this started with the arrest of some teenagers in the town of Deraa for spraying anti-regime graffiti. It clearly has grown. How has it grown? Who's involved now?
Okay. What we really have to realize that the seeds of this revolution, of course, has been planted years ago. What we're talking about here with the arrest of the children in Deraa, we're talking about sort of the immediate cause. But people got an idea that the times were suitable for a revolution finally when, of course, the Sidi Bouzid in Tunisia spark was made, and the Tunisians managed to topple their regime, and then the Egyptians, and then we saw immediately how the spark or the wave of protest took over the region. A lot of Syrians said, well, finally, I mean, our time is now, seems to be. And the people who said so were actually teenagers and young people in their 20s who were inside Syria, and they went to Facebook, they went to other social networking sites, and they began chatting with dissidents inside the country and outside the country, and they said, okay, I mean, we're willing to listen now. We understand that we can do it. So what can we do? But they took the leadership. I mean, it was the discussion was about timing, about tactics, about messages that they should be very careful to enunciate. I thought for a while that it would be better to actually push the dates of the revolution a little bit until the summer because we needed more time to communicate with different groups within Syrian society. We're a very heterogeneous society, but I was outvoted.
Well, Ambassador Ted Qutoof, what has it grown into? What are they now calling for, and how much are they pushing for change here?
Well, it's grown in Deraa, at least, in the surrounding villages. In one village today, people who tried to march, there's reports that 15 of them were killed, into an anti-regime movement there. These people originally came out demanding the release of these young kids who spray-painted graffiti, copying perhaps what happened in Egypt and the like, and were treated obviously very brutally by the police in Deraa. And that's what sparked all of this. But now there are new martyrs, if you will, being created every day, and the regime has just been incredibly clumsy, and it's appalling, the violence they've used.
Now, fill in a little bit the picture of this regime for those we don't follow it all the time. The Assad regime has been known for a very tight authoritarian grip for a long time, but the son, Bashar, has at least given an image of trying to open it up a little bit in recent years. No?
That's right. The father ruled for 30 years as the unquestioned president of Syria. He put down a Muslim Brotherhood campaign against him, an armed campaign, by the way, brutally in 1982, but it was effective, and everybody got the message. You don't do this. You don't question the regime. You know, as long as you don't get involved in politics, you'll be fine. Just go along. The son came in June of 2000 and started right away to suggest that there was going to be major reforms done. And I think some of the old guard must have gotten to him and said, look, this system doesn't run that way. It doesn't work this way. And I
have a slightly different interpretation, if I may, Ted, of how sort of Bashar acted. I think in the beginning, the reason there was so much, little openness actually in comparison to the previous era was because he was still trying to find his footing. I mean, he was still young. He was not necessarily completely accepted by the old guard. He didn't know how to run a country to begin with. I mean, he wasn't really well prepared or groomed for the job.
Well, he worked with his father 7 years.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to have given him a lot of indication as how to do it, because as we've seen a lot of clumsy things, and you were there, in fact, at the time. You've seen how clumsy he was in the first few years. That allowed for the openness. So the openness wasn't because of his decision or his reform intentions. It was because he really didn't know how to control the society, and there was some competition.
Let me ask you this, because now you see him responding with a mix of one day putting out some possible reforms, including getting rid of the emergency law, but also clearly a very heavy hand of violence here. Is Is this the response you'd expect? Is this him still trying to figure out how much support he has from within the society? Well,
it's very interesting. His spokesperson, Buthaina Shaban, was on a press conference yesterday in which she said she heard the president order the security chiefs not to use violence. This is after 34 people, by their count, were dead. Now, this is a man who's been president for 11 years. He's had time to move the old guard out and put his people in place in the various overlapping security services in the military. It sounds like he's trying to play the role of a monarch and put himself above the fray, and I'm not really responsible for this. But he's at a crossroads. Bashar al-Assad, an eye doctor, a guy who studied to save people's eyesight, who did a residency in London, who married a very educated and sophisticated woman of Syrian ethnicity but UK citizenship, has to decide, is he going to give in and go totally to the dark side, the Darth Vader sort of option, or is he going to take the risks and try to open up the system and stop this killing?
And what do you look for from the opposition in terms of its growth and its spread to know how successful it will be, whether it has the ability to either enforce reforms or perhaps get rid of the regime?
Well, I mean, getting rid of the regime right now is on everybody's mind. To be honest with you, to us, Bashar al-Assad was a thug to begin with, and he's a thug now. He was a thug then, he was a thug now. He's a Fredo Corleone who mushroomed into a Sonny Corleone. With the idea of reform, the idea of him being suddenly finding some kind of reform impulses is impossible right now.
I thought it was Michael.
He was never Michael. He was never Michael. Michael tried to reform, and I think this is exactly what people wanted.
We're going to have a disagreement about it.
And that's the one disagreement you have, is over which Corleone.
Exactly.
But seriously, what in the next couple of days here, because you say it's a key point.
It's a key point. It's actually what's going to happen right now. I think the opposition, both inside and outside the country, realize that this is a golden opportunity, that the street is finally moving, and they're demanding. There were people calling the streets saying the people want to topple the regime. We've heard it being said in many of the demonstrations. The people in Daraa were coming out and naming Bashar and his brother Maher by name and calling them cowards. The posters of Bashar al-Assad and even of Hafiz al-Assad in many Syrian cities were defaced, in Daraa, in Latakia, in Homs, in Damascus. So that really indicates that finally this is an anti-regime, an anti-Assad revolution. It's not simply about minor reforms. So what Buthaina Shaban, the spokeswoman of the regime, said yesterday was about some concessions. This is too little, too late, and we've seen this kind of scenario in Tunisia.
This is an entrenched regime. I disagree with Amar in the sense that, yes, those are a lot of people who want to see probably Bashar and the regime go after 40 years. It's only natural. There's too much of a gap in wealth. There's too little development in Syria. There are terrible droughts. But at the same time, there's a party called the Ba'ath Party, and it's a patronage system. And there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands, maybe a couple million people that belong to the Ba'ath Party. There are lots of prominent business people. There are a lot of prominent people in the military, et cetera, who benefit from this regime. This regime is not going to go down easily.
That might be the case, by the way, just one point. But I want to point out something. In Daraa, many of the people who actually came to the street were members of the Ba'ath Party. I mean, these young people in these kind of areas are always members of the Ba'ath Party, so they can benefit exactly from the patronage system. And yet they came out onto the street and they demonstrated in protest. The party could be part of the solution and not only part of the problem.
All right, we will watch in the coming days for sure. Amar Abdul Hamid, Ted Qutoof, thank you both very much.
Thank you.